And greetings. And folks, this is the best time of year. You're going to hear me saying that a lot the next couple weeks, but it is. And I welcome everyone to the QCast. This is season 3, episode 22. And Ryan Kershaw is with me, the head coach of Carleton College Knights. And when you think, Ryan, about the best time of year, that game you had last night against St. John's is like the perfect example. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into your season. First of all, thank you for joining me. How's everything going up there in Minnesota?
Well, I appreciate you having me on first and foremost, Bob. It's great to be able to do this. And to your point, at about the 4 minute mark of the first half last night, when St. John's hit their 8-3 the first half, and I think took a 16-point lead on us, I was not thinking that this was the best time of the year, um, but no, it really is. In all seriousness, it's great, and I think it's so cool, for us at the Division III level to be able to get to experience that, for our student athletes to be able to experience a lot of that, is really, really neat.
It is. It's such a fun time of year when your team is in the middle of it, and it's just there's nothing quite like it. We're going to get into a lot of stuff related to this. Thanks for being okay. We were going to do this a week ago, and I was watching the Hoopsville Marathon, and I realized you were with Dave. And instead of doing it back to back, we decided let's give it another week. Let's have some more games to talk about. But boy, let's just kind of recap where you're sitting right now. Your Carleton Knights are 19-3 on the season. You're 14-3 in the MIAC. You are 3 clear at this point of McAllister, and you have them coming up, I believe. Coming into the year, Ryan, and this is your first season as head coach. You were the assistant for 9 years previous. Coming into the season, I know you had a really good year last year. Did you think this kind of year was possible?
To be honest, 19-3, maybe not, but we had high expectations coming to the year. We knew the group that we had coming back. We knew that, we had a good season last year. We had one senior last year, and we had a team last year that it's amazing to me to think about the transformation that we've had, where, I think of our team this year as being, really old and experienced. And a year ago, I thought of us as being really young and inexperienced. Yeah. And a lot of that had to do with, the group that's seniors now. When they were sophomores, they didn't play. We were the only team in our conference to not play any games during COVID. I think we had about 25 to 30 practices during that time. As a matter of fact, almost our entire team took the winter term at Carleton. Academically, they took that off, and at least off campus, and took classes remote from that standpoint. So, we started last year with we knew we had some talent, but we didn't have the experience, and it was just kind of a feeling out. And I just think there's so much to be said. This is not an original thought at all, but experience matters so much, in college basketball, really at every level, but particularly at ours. And we had one senior a year ago who he's still actually playing now. He's a grad transfer at the University of Chicago, and so just that sense of urgency that happens with seniors is really been critical to the success of our team this year. And it's been a great year. It's been a lot of fun to be a part of. And with this particular group, it's a very high character group. It's a group that I enjoy being around literally every day, and they enjoy being around each other too, which makes, when you're having the success that you're having that we've had this year, it really makes for a fun season.
Well, you mentioned the COVID year, and you were one of the schools that didn't play in what was that, 2021, I guess it was. A lot of schools made the same decision. A lot of the UAAs, for example, like I don't think Chicago played any games. WashU didn't play any games. When I look back at that season, and I think of like my guys, the Illinois Wesleyan Titans, every time I watch them thinking they only have a few games left, I think of what they went through. And whether you played that year or you didn't, I think of our guys having to take a test to find out if they get on a bus that day. And they played 7 games that season, had a bunch canceled. And does looking at your juniors and seniors, I guess, do you feel the same way that, boy, these guys have been through a lot as college students that they didn't really sign up for?
I think that's a terrific point. And it's something that I think, certainly our players we're all certainly aware of. And we just celebrated senior day this past Saturday. And it was one thing that I wanted to make sure that was mentioned is that, in the last, we'll just call it 6 months to 9 months to maybe even year-ish, as things have normalized from a society, just as a society, it is easy to forget, a lot of the things that you're talking about, Bob, that you referenced with the teams. And I'll give an example, even from last year. We played last year. We had 3 games that were canceled. But we had, there was still fairly significant restrictions for us, as far as masking during games, the testing aspect for us. We were planning to take a trip to go play Aurora in Chicago, in kind of mid to late December. It was our last game before our holiday break. And, we got the bus is ready outside the gym and our players, go to test and, we have a couple positive tests. And so that trip got canceled. The game got canceled. We had parents flying in from California, from the East Coast, who are all planning to go to that. And it's just like, no, sorry, we're not playing the game. And so again, I think now as things have become more normalized, it's easy to forget those things. And yes, this is an incredibly unique senior class, certainly here at Carleton, but across the country, and for all the things that you're referencing, that their resiliency is very admirable in so many different ways. And I think it's something really important that we don't lose sight of that.
It's a great point that last year was not a walk in the park. It seems like it was a while ago, but you're right. Like in January, we had a few games that were postponed, or I can't remember what, like we played games without a starter and our head coach, because when our guys came back from New York, a bunch of guys had COVID. And you're right, that was just one season ago that we were still like, so I guess that's a really good point, is that these guys that are on the roster right now, they certainly didn't come to college thinking there'd be a global pandemic. And wouldn't you agree? Like, it's been amazing to watch how Division III student athletes have lived through this. I don't think I would have done very well with this. I think I would have. These guys have been resilient. I'm talking about the whole universe of Division III student athletes. Have you seen that on your campus, Ryan? Just like a resiliency around what's gone on the last few years?
You and I both would not have made that. That would have been a struggle for me for sure. And I think I agree with you. And I'll even take it to another level too, in the sense that, last spring on our campus was the first spring term that our juniors, our current senior class now, had spent, on campus. And so, Carleton, like a lot of colleges, have a lot of traditions and whatnot. And so we have a couple big events in the spring every year that are really highlights for just from a student activity standpoint. Forget about student athlete. And, our juniors last year had not experienced that before. And so they didn't know what for example, a spring concert was like, or Rotblat, or, any of those, the night awards that we do. They had not been able to experience any of that. And so yeah, there's no question, across the board. And we don't have any 5th year, student athletes on our team here. But, for me as a coach, I have no qualms with anybody ever utilizing that 5th year, because at our level, particularly because, they did get a year taken away from them, and that experience. This is all about experience, here, and athletics are a big part of the student experience at all of our institutions. And, for somebody to want to be able to take advantage of that, I have no issues or qualms with that whatsoever.
Do you guys have grad programs at Carleton, or are you all undergrad?
We're all undergrad, and we're actually on a unique academic calendar. We are on a trimester calendar.
Gotcha.
And so, for us, for winter sports, for men's basketball, it's incredibly difficult for our student athletes to be able to utilize a 5th year. In general terms, a lot of our kids are, they have their careers. They have, even our kid, Alex Batiste, who's at University of Chicago now, who, he's in a grad program there. Even if he wanted to play another year of college basketball at Carleton, like that, just where he's going with his life and his
Right.
career, that wasn't going to be the case. And so, so yeah, we do not have that. We're one of the few schools, certainly in our conference, that does not have any grad school opportunities available. And just with the academic calendar that we have, it's unique. It's very, very difficult for our kids to be able to utilize that fifth year.
Again, I'm with you. Is I want every kid that got cheated out of that season to use it this year. And on the flip side, I think it's also okay to acknowledge that it's a big deal that's impacting Division III, and it's all personal to all of our schools. Like we have a kid from last year, Matt Laritz. It's one of the best players in Division II right now.
Yep.
If we had a grad program and Matt could get his MBA at Illinois Wesleyan, I think we'd be pretty good this year. Or Pete Lambesis is at Trevecca Nazarene. Our point guard is started a game at Kansas this year for North Dakota State. So like, when I look at our league, Wheaton has Tyson Cruikshank. They brought in a fifth-year guy from Claremont Mudd Scripps, TJ Askew. I'm happy for all these kids, but I think, is it okay for us to say that the fifth year is having a big impact in Division III? Do you agree with that, or kind of what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I totally agree with you. And like I said, last year, we were the only team in our conference, and I think in the top 8 teams, that did not have a fifth-year kid. This year, there's a little bit less of it across the board in our league, but there's still, I could go through the teams that have fifth-year players. And I would say for us personally here at Carleton, we have a player, Jeremy Beckler, who is one of the best players in school history. He's one of the best players, in our conference in the last 20 years. He lost his whole sophomore year. And so statistically speaking, he scored his 1,000th point earlier this year. But he's not going to have some of the accolades, that most players, throughout a career would have. And he's also going to run up against, this year, because of the amount of fifth-year kids, as far as you start talking about All-American,
Yeah, you're right.
And just some of the postseason awards stuff. Like it's going to be a little bit more challenging for him from that standpoint. And so, that's the personal side of it for me. But again, it's such a unique time that we're all experiencing, and that's just the reality of where we are and what we're kind of faced with right now.
Yeah, and I think it's okay to talk about that without it sounding like it's a bad thing for it's a thing, right? Is there's some kids that are getting squeezed on rosters that are in the guys that were in high school during COVID. They've had kind of a tough go of this. That's one thing. And guys like Beckler, and how he'll stack up against other 4 and 5 guys in All-American teams. So definitely a relevant conversation. I haven't talked about that on the QCast, so I'm glad it did come up. Let's talk about that game last night, because as I'm watching Illinois Wesleyan and Millikan, I'm like, well, I'm talking to Ryan tomorrow. It'd be a more fun conversation if his team wins. And right now it's not looking good. It didn't look good at the half. It didn't look good like 12 minutes. I'm like, okay, we got to go now. We got to go. I think like 9:40, I want to say you were down 10. And then I'm watching live stats and I see like Beckler, it got to 3 in a hurry. So let's talk. And then I went back, I watched the whole second half today. When you were down 10 there, it didn't seem like anyone on your team was in panic mode. It looked like your guys had their wits about them. Talk to me about like the situation down 10 with, 9 something to go.
Well, and I'll even go back when we were down 16 in the first half, and we were in the first half. Our thought process was, I think as a staff, myself, it was okay, and I think the team a little bit too, was okay. Let's try to get it to 10. At the half. It's something that's manageable. We ended up cutting it to 9. And then, the first couple possessions of the second half, let's see, we got it to 5, and then they went on a run. And next thing you know, at the 15-minute mark, we're down 13 and having to dig out of that. And there's a couple things I would say, specific to our team. I think why, this is the value of having a veteran experienced team. There wasn't any panic. We had also been there before. We had actually our third game of the year. We were out in Colorado, and we had our first game out there. We had a very nice win against a really solid Whitworth team.
Absolutely.
And then turn around the next night and play against Carroll. And who obviously you're very familiar with the CCIW, and
They beat Elmhurst last
we
night.
were down 19. Carroll had us down in the second half, and we, our guys just kind of refused to lose. I mean, I know that's very cliche to say that, but they just did. And that was really a game where after that, myself and our staff kind of thought, this might have a chance to be a special season, with the type of group that we have. And that was certainly evident last night. St. John's, is a tremendous program. They have championship DNA. The coaching staff, the players, the amount of success that they've had at a program is tremendous. And so, there's no way they're just going to they're just going to walk in, last night and just say, hey, you guys take it. They were ready to go. They brought it. Absolutely. And it was a great game. And I'm just proud of our team, the resiliency, the fight, the grit, everything that we showed last night was really special.
Well, let me ask you this question, and I know the answer. How many minutes of the game last night did your team lead?
Our assistant coach told me that he looked at the box score at the end and he said first lead was, I think, 52 seconds left in the game. And so that was that's not quite a 1 in a million, but and we had another game this year actually against Hamlin at home where
sure.
We that game was over 3 different times we had lost, and we just kind of found a way. We got fouled in a 3 twice, got lucky with a turnover there and hit kind of a miracle shot. And those are just, I think that's reflective of the type of season, and certainly proud of our group. There's a correlation with that too, just not letting go of the rope and just believing. We have very tough kids and very competitive kids, and those type of games I think lead to and build on a game like last night, where again there isn't the panic that you might experience with a younger team from that standpoint. We just didn't just didn't happen last night.
Wanted to ask you about your 6'8" senior leading scorer, Jeremy Beckler. When you guys were down 10, 9 something left, he scored a basket to make it 8, little kind of right hand hook shot. Next possession, I think he had an and one, so he had a 5-0 run just to get it to 5. The play that gave you guys your first lead that we just talked about, 73-71, was him going to the basket, getting fouled. I don't think he did get fouled. They didn't call a foul. He scored, but he is. I always talk about like the dying breed that is the D3-5. I guess it'd be the 5 at every level, but the 6'7" type kid who legitimately can play with his back to the basket. There aren't many left. There just aren't. He also can step out and shoot it. Can you talk about his skill set and just kind of what he brings to your team?
Oh, his skill set. I mean, he's the most talented player, that offensive player that I've coached. And we've been lucky at Carleton. We've had, 2 Jostens Trophy finalists, Kevin Groh, Kent Hansen. We had a kid, Freddie Gillespie, who transferred to Baylor. He played 2 years at Carleton, transferred to Baylor. Kent Hansen's playing overseas right now. And we've had some excellent players here. Jeremy's the most talented offensive player that I've coached and been around. And yes, his skill set, yes, he has some elements. I remember the first time I watched him play, his junior year of high school, and it was like I just was enamored with his footwork. As a 16-year-old in high school playing. And I would compare him to, he's essentially like our version of a Tim Duncan. And just his, certainly his offensive ability, his skill set, but his demeanor. I mean, the kid has an unflappable demeanor, and he just doesn't get phased, too high, too low. He just plays the game. And, when your best player, when your most talented player is also your most coachable player. And quite frankly, he's also one of the smartest basketball players I've been around. I just remember coaching him as a freshman, and it was like we would tell him something, and it was like you tell him at one time and it becomes a habit. And he and I, we've been around each other for so long. After 4 years we speak the same basketball language. And, our two assistant coaches who are new, and they're kind of new to this year. And like, they're like, how, and it's like, listen, like Jeremy and Beck and some of these seniors that we've been around, like they understand what I'm talking about when, it's a little bit new for
Sure.
freshmen or sophomores from that standpoint too. So, Jeremy, I cannot say enough good things about him as a person, as a player, the value that he's brought to our program. There is no doubt our record would not be what it is without him. He's so central to everything we do, and just his versatility is really key. And I think, we've been able to surround him with some other really good pieces too, that complement not only his skill set, but also, give us, our team, that versatility that makes us pretty difficult to defend from a night to night standpoint.
He reminds me a lot of, and I don't know if you've ever watched Middlebury play. He reminds me of Alex Sobel. Alex Sobel is also a five man that is smart, and you could like he plays a lot like in the high post. He also plays in the low post. I just think it's so hard to find that position anymore. Like it's the way high school games are played. When you go recruit, I doubt there's too many guys you're seeing that are playing with their back to the basket like he can anymore. And is it getting tougher to find, that true low post guy on the recruiting trail?
There's no question. And I think for us to, the players that I mentioned to you, we've had good post players here for whatever reason, even predating, my time, as an assistant coach here. A lot of the best players that we've had in the history of our program are, 6'6" and above. And a lot of them are from Minnesota, from that standpoint. But yes, it is more difficult, and even Jeremy a little bit, where, his ball skills, like he's a good passer, a good shooter. And he's had great coaching along the way, and he's had a great fundamental base, to work with. And, we're just very fortunate to have him. A player of his caliber to be able to come here is tremendous.
Yeah, he's a great player. If you haven't watched Jeremy Beckler, everyone that's tuning in, do so. Like, he really good player. You can watch the on demand of that St. John's game last night. Coach Pride doesn't want you to watch the first 30 minutes or so, but if you want to watch the last 10, that's
correct.
Great.
Luke, at least Harris, not the defense in the first 30 minutes. So.
Luke Harris is a 6'1" sophomore guard that averages 17 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. He shoots 56% from the field. Beckler shoots 52%. Luke Harris made some plays for you last night. He's quick. He's a quick guard, does things. Talk a little bit about Luke Harris, if you would.
Yeah, in that game last night, it kind of got to a point in the second half where it's like, I know Jeremy and Luke are going to need to, they're going to need a break at some point, but too bad. Like, we're just not going to take them out of the game. We can't take them out of the game right now. And, I cannot say enough good things about Luke Harris, and how fortunate we are to have him in our program as well. If you ask any of our coaches about Luke, they're going to tell you he's the most competitive kid they've ever been around. And, he's battled, some injuries kind of throughout his year last year and here. And so, I remember, before the year we talked, and I just said, okay, here's the plan. Here's what we're going to do, with practices. And there's going to be some drills, that we're going to have to hold you out. I'm going to limit your reps or this or that. And, it's hilarious, to our staff where, I'll take him out of a drill. We'll have some competitive drill going, and he'll just look at me and he just gets so upset. Like, how can you take me out of this drill, coach? We're going to win this. My team is going to win, or whatever. And like, he is one of the guys, again, that, his competitive will, and his toughness is tremendous. And yeah, his basketball skill set, he gives us something that we really, really needed, some playmaking, in his finishing at the basket. And he's really developed as a shooter too. He was much more of a slasher,
sure,
in high school, and he just worked so hard and has committed to being a great outside threat, and he has been. And every facet of his game, his free throws were something that a year ago he wanted to work, needed to work on, and he's become a really, really good free throw shooter for us. I just can't say enough good things about him, again, as his skill set, and then just his mentality and what he brings to our team.
Another guy I wanted to ask you about, you have great size, in that you have another guy who's big, 6'7" guy, Matt, is it Banovitz? Am I saying that right?
You got it.
Matt Banovitz is a 6'7" junior forward, averages 10 and 6. That game last night, he made a really big play with like 5 minutes to go on a rebound. And it seemed like the Johnny's guy had the rebound, and it literally just ripped it away from him. And it ended up being a huge play. He seems to me like one of these kind of hustle guys, makes big 50-50 type plays. Talk about Matt Benovitz, if you would.
I would say you're exactly right. He is what I would term a foxhole guy, where he's somebody that in a game when it gets tough, it gets competitive, I want him out there. We have a number of guys that I would put, certainly Jeremy and Luke, and then
Right.
a number of other guys that I would put in that category as well. And I remember last year as a freshman, we recruited Matt very hard out of high school, and he was really, really a good shooter and is a good shooter. He's got good back to the basket skills as well, has developed into a pretty good passer. He's got good natural passing skills, and he's developed into a really good defender. But I remember last year, we were down, we played 2 non-conference games down at Trinity in Texas. And I remember the game at Trinity, a great game against a fantastic Trinity team. Coach Smith, who I have just great respect for, him and his program. And, it was a great game down there, and there's about 2 minutes to go. And there's kind of a loose ball around half court, and Matt Banovitz just Superman dives for that ball. And it was just like, that kid, all right, I can work with that. And just his effort and his, the play that you're talking about last night was a huge play.
Yeah.
And his competitive will, and just, this is my ball, I'm getting this ball.
Yeah.
It ended up being a huge play for us.
And then one other guy I wanted to ask you about, Alex Gibbons, a 6'4" junior guard, 11 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. You've got a lot of these guys that kind of stuff the stat sheet, which is always great when a guy that scores also rebounds it and distributes. I think he's the lefty, isn't he? Is he a lefty?
He's a righty, but Luke Harris 14 is the
Okay,
lefty.
there, yeah. Luke's the lefty. Okay, Alex Gibbons is righty.
Gibby's
Alex,
a righty. And
Alex does all kinds of good things for you out there, including, again, another guy that made a bunch of big plays. Talk about Alex, if you would.
Oh, like, give me a team full of Alex Gibbons, and we'll have we'll have a pretty good team. All the things that you said, his versatility. I mean, he really brings a lot of value from a playmaking standpoint. He's got great natural passing skills. He can really shoot it. And teams, we have really good, obviously bigs with Jeremy and with Matt Banovitz that can score inside. And so having that playmaking is huge. And so that we get a lot of that from Luke Harris and from Alex Gibbons. Alex's parents, Alex is from the East Coast. He, grew up, went to high school in Connecticut. His parents are both Carleton alums. And so they're very familiar, obviously, with the institution and whatnot. And he's just been a blessing for our team and our program. And the play that you're talking about last night, he had an offensive rebound off a free throw, in the last 10 seconds of the game that bought us an extra possession. We're able to get it to a 2-possession game last night. And huge plays. And we talk about all those. Those are the plays around the margins, right? And I can't say enough good things about him. And I'm going to add one more too. In addition to Alex Gibbons, Spencer Getz, who's our 5th starter, who, if you look at his stat line, doesn't wow you necessarily. You look at the box and you say, okay, well, he only took 2 shots. He was 1 of 2 from the field, and, but he had 2 steals. He had 2 offensive rebounds and 3 defensive rebounds, and his plus minus, he was plus 12, our guys all call him Draymond, because he's got a lot of the Draymond Green characteristics where he just, for a team, we have a lot of really good shooting on our team, and he's not one of the guys that's a prolific shooter per se. But he's a very, very intelligent player, and he's a winner, and he's, off the ball. He's a great screener. He's a great cutter. He's a great passer. His assisted turnover is unbelievable. It's terrific. Yeah. And he is a huge part of our success too. And so he doesn't necessarily get the pub or his numbers don't show up in the box score like the other guys do, but he's a tremendous part of our success, and very fortunate to have him on our team too.
Yeah. It's funny how that works out. Every great team has a Spencer Getz, that nationally people don't jump to, but everyone close to the program, the fans, the coaches, they all know that, like, he's so important to your team. just on your team as a whole, was looking at your season box score. I always find that interesting to see what jumps out, from like an Eric Bridgeland Redlands team to, looking at, a team that's, shooting 51% like Rochester. Um, what jumps out to me is what I saw in watching your game last night. And I think I've watched parts of 4 other games. You guys share the ball, you pass the ball really well. The stat that jumps out to me is that you have 343 assists to 249 turnovers. And I think you average, can't remember what the numbers, you might average 16 or 17 assists a game, which is huge in today's game. You rebound it well, you're +6. That doesn't surprise me with Beckler and Banovitz in there, and all your guys crash the glass. But I think more than anything, you just move the ball really well. Is that kind of how, if you had to describe your offensive strength, how would you put it?
I think that's well said. I think the thing for me is the versatility, and we do have a lot of natural passers on our team. It starts with Jeremy. He's just so unselfish too. From that standpoint, he's got some great natural passing. Our bigs can both shoot it and pass it, and then our guards are the same. I mean, they have Alex Gibbons, Luke Harris, very good natural passing ability, and they can also shoot it too. So any type of ball screen or activity that we do, and we're not like a huge ball screen team, but we certainly do when we can. And just the value of you put 2 defenders on the ball with Jeremy, Luke. I mean, teams have decisions they have to make from that standpoint, and the spacing is huge.
Absolutely.
Just the gravity that we have from that standpoint, and teams. Everybody. We get great coaches in our league, great coaches at our level, and so teams are going to try to find where you're vulnerable, what your weaknesses are. And, we've seen a lot of different schemes as far as teams. Okay, well, how can we guard Spencer if he's not as prolific a shooter? And, he's such a good screener. He's such a good cutter and such a good passer, offensive rebounder, that he puts a lot of pressure on teams from that standpoint too. So yes, you're exactly right. We do move it. Our assisted turnover is as good as it's been for a little while. And I just think this is the best shooting team that we've had. And that wasn't the case last night. St. John's did a great job, kind of taking some of that away. But I think that speaks to our versatility again. Okay, if you're going to take that away, that means Jeremy and some of our guys inside are going to have a few more one-on-one opportunities where they're going to be pretty effective from that standpoint.
I wanted to talk about the league a little bit. It's obviously a league in transition because St. Thomas is now gone. So they're a few years into being in their move to Division I, as everyone knows. But it's also, I think, Ryan, I look at it, it's probably an underrated league currently. When St. Thomas was there, and it was St. Thomas and St. John's, and then whoever the rest of the cast was, whether it was Gustavus or Augsburg or St. Olaf, whoever, it was always viewed as a really good league. I think right now it's underappreciated because the names are different. So the names at the top now, Carleton, McAllister, and I've had Abe on the QCast, and I know what they're building there, and they're going to be really good for a long time. St. John's is obviously great. You watched that game last night, and they're huge and physical, and they're as talented as ever. Do you think that the MIAC has become somehow a little bit underrated with St. Thomas gone now, or what's your sense there?
I'm very biased in this, but yes, I agree with you. I think that's the case. And I think there's a lot of different factors and reasons for that. I think historically speaking, again, I sound like a broken record with this, but I think, our league, we're the only 11-team conference in the country that plays a true round robin.
Yes.
And so where our teams stack up, from a pool C and just strength of schedule, I think it gets minimized or marginalized sometimes because the numbers work against us and it doesn't speak to the quality. And I just look at our teams in our league this year. And this goes back, I could tell you anecdotes from years past, but I think St. Mary's in our league this year, they've got 2 of the best non-conference wins in the country. They won at La Crosse and they won at North Park.
Yep.
You're not going to find them in the regional rankings because playing as many conference games as we do, that hurts their strength of schedule, their opponent strength of schedule, and all of that. And, I think that's the league is in transition, with having St. Thomas out of the league, which was fantastic for our league. on so many levels. And, I do think, the narrative behind how St. Thomas left the league, I think also, contributes to that in some way, shape, or form. And I'm not here to say whether that's right or wrong. I just think, when it was kind of,
right.
St. Thomas is essentially kicked out because it's, they're too competitive, and the other schools, how that's, that was the narrative that was kind of put out there. And I think that did hurt, minimize.
I think you're right about that. I think that people both consciously and subconsciously probably do hold that against the league. I think you're right about that. I think I've never thought of it that way, but I think there's something to that. I really do.
I just think, again, our league, I could tell anecdotes from teams in our league that have, 5 years ago that finished, 8th in our conference, that went out on a neutral court and beat teams that were in the Elite Eight. And, again, I think that's the balance and the depth and all that. And you just don't see that because of the way our numbers stack up in a lot of ways. But the quality of, you ask any coach, in our league, we've had great coaching. And we still do currently, and we've had historically great coaching, great players across the board. So, yes, of course, I'm going to be biased in my opinion in saying that, but I'm not naive to any of this, and I know, I know where we are and all those things, but I do think our league has great basketball, great coaching, great players.
Do you follow the resume stuff? Like I'm one of the guys that loves to try to put together how I think Pool C stacks up, and like to your point right now, if you guys were to lose in the championship game of the conference, it's super dicey. I can't remember your resume. You're in the 800 winning percentage. I think your SOS is like 510
just above 500.
Yeah, just above 500, 505 or something. And you have a couple RRO wins, not a ton. Do you follow that stuff, and are you aware kind of where you sit as this next couple weeks plays out?
I do follow it. And, again, for me, I've been a member of the NABC for 15 plus years. I've gone to, I don't know how many last Final Fours and sat in at the D3 coaches meeting. I've sat in on the D3 Congress meeting. My predecessor guy was our Congress rep. And so I've sat in and so I'm familiar with all the matrix. I know how all the SOS, none of this stuff is new. And I know where we stack up and the challenges that we have from that standpoint. So yes, I'm aware of all of that. And I think, another thing that I would say, which is just an interesting perspective, is I think back to my own experience as a student athlete. I was at St. Olaf from 2000 to 2004. Yeah. And, during that time, Gustavus had some terrific teams. Gustavus, my sophomore year of college, Gustavus played the national championship game. Yep. And, my college roommate had a good friend of his who was on that Gustavus team. And, one of my teammates at St. Olaf, his brother was on the Gustavus team. And, this predates and ages me a little bit. But in 2002, we couldn't get live stats for that national championship game that Gustavus was in. And now our players, they ask me about, Coach, did you see on D3 bubble, they're projecting this, or, I had one of our players who said to me, he's like, yeah, Coach, I was watching, he's like, I was watching Utica and St. John's Fisher.
That's awesome.
And I'm like, you were watching who?
That's great.
Like, what? And he's like, well, D3 Bubble's got, Utica's one of the teams that's just ahead of us. And so I just kind of want to see. And I'm like, I think to me, the reason I bring that up is it's very different. Like I had awareness about the national tournament as a player, but nothing like, there's just so much more awareness for our players, the student athletes, certainly at Carleton, but across the board in Division III. And so I think that all goes into part of, trying to provide an opportunity for our players to be able to experience a national tournament for a team like we have this year. And historically we've had in our league to be able to provide opportunities for that, I think is partly our responsibility to be able to do that.
I know you talked about this with Dave on Hoopsville a little bit, but just to ask maybe in another way, if I compare your situation and your resume to a NESCAC team, so like I've got Hamilton as being in great shape in the NESCAC because they have this crazy SOS and all these RROs, and the NESCAC does not play a double round robin, and you guys do. And so when you're, how many league games do you play?
We play 20. 80% of our 80% of our schedule is league play, which is an absolute SOS killer.
It's yeah, because obviously just pure math is the league games are all going to end up being 500s, right? And so that doesn't leave you guys many, even if you scheduled great, perfectly. I don't really know where that leaves your SOS. So do you think there's any real conversation and possibility about getting this to where there's less league games?
Yeah, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to get anybody in trouble. But to be honest and be direct, yes, there's been conversation for a long time about it amongst coaches, even going back to my time as an assistant at Augsburg. So it's, again, as coaches in our league, we're not naive to this. I think the challenge for us and the opportunity is that there has been a little bit of a shift, in our league from an administrative standpoint. Sure. I think coaches now, there's, again, all the things that I talked about with the awareness. And so I do think there's more opportunity for that moving forward. What that's going to look like, I'm not totally sure, but I think almost every coach in our conference agrees that the 20 league model is, we're talking about, it's not going to work if we're talking about national tournament and opportunities and those things. And I certainly get it from an administrative standpoint too. There's budgets, there's missed class time, all of the concerns that need to go into shaping a decision like this. But I do think there's probably more momentum now than we've ever had. And I'm not going to sit here and make any promises, but I do think it's something that'll get explored. And I think there's probably a better chance now that something will change, moving forward. What that's going to look like, I'm not exactly sure. There's, the ODAC model, the NESCAC. I think there's a lot of other considerations to kind of sift through. Right. But yes, it is a topic, and it is something that we're all aware of, and are hoping to see to change. Yeah, because so many other leagues have it so much better than that. Just like the CCIW has 9 teams now that Carroll's back. That still leaves 9 non-conference games, which is plenty of room to go out for Illinois Wesleyan and play WashU and Oshkosh and St. Joe of Connecticut, whoever, get a few additional great games in there. I just don't know that you guys, with all those league games, would ever be able to put together the perfect schedule. You'd literally have to just get lucky and not only schedule all the right teams, but then have them have amazing years for that to work out. So I'm glad there's some momentum. I would just add to that real quick. I think, historically, because we have had some Pool Cs, and again, I don't think we've had, I'd have to go back and confirm this, but in my little bit of research that I've looked at, I don't remember the last. I think any 20 or 21 win team that we've had in our league that's had above a 500 SOS has actually gotten a Pool C. Yep. Now the difference this year is that we don't have St. Thomas, and so historically with St. Thomas, that's 2 games where you're boosting your SOS, even in league that it still hurts, but those are 2 big wins or 2 big SOS games, plus the opportunity to get a regional ranked, and that's where we're at right now. The challenge, like I said, St. Mary's, who's got some great wins. St. John's has got a couple. St. Olaf, they've got some good wins too in the non-conference, and you're not going to see any of those teams, which hurts us. Like, we're not going to see any of those teams that are in the regional rankings because of our SOS and whatnot. And so that's the challenge. The model has always been like, go 5-0 in the non-conference, try to play good teams, try to get 1 or 2 regional ranked wins if you can. And I thought, looking at our non-conference, I said this on Dave's too, so I apologize for repeating it. But no, please do. Whitworth, a tremendous program. That, looking at that at the beginning of the year, that we knew that was going to be a tough game. Carroll, CCIW team, in a unique situation with their coaching change and whatnot. And in that game, now, I looked at it and I thought, well, that's actually going to be a good game for us because they're going to have a great SOS. They play in a great league. Well, it actually hurts us in some ways too, from playing teams in really good leagues that have, are not at the top of the league. That's true. And then we played, the worst non-conference game, that we played was on the road, which obviously hurts the home, the home road multiplier, which hurt too. And so with 5, like, you're just limited, and you got to hope you hit it right. And
Yeah.
we did our best this year, and hopefully it doesn't come down to that. But if it does, we'll see how it all stacks out.
Yeah. And there's still a long way to go. You're 3 games left. I guess the big one is the next one. That's the 11th, and that's at McAllister, and they're very good. They're 15-7, 11-6. They have some crazy talent. That Badu Ba guy, I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right.
You are.
Just crazy talent. I had Abe on here. We talked about him. That game at McAllister is going to be crazy good. Like, just what are a couple thoughts about what you have coming up there in that one?
Oh, that's going to be a great game. There's no doubt about it. I mean, that's going to be a playoff level game. What Abe has built there is tremendous. And you're exactly right. They have some fantastic players. There'll be a great crowd there. It's a Saturday game, doubleheader. That'll be a fantastic environment. That'll be a great game. And, it'd be a good challenge for us for sure. Play average, you're going to get beaten that way. There's no doubt. I mean, we're going to really have to play at a high level to be able to get out of there. And so, that will be a really fun environment, great game. And I think our guys are very much looking for the opportunity to go there.
You've got then 2 road games, and on paper, you're supposed to beat 7-10 and 6-11, Concordia, Moorhead, and St. Scholastica, but it's like any other league. You go on the road late in the season, and nothing's easy. So, on paper, you're the favorites there in those final 2 games, but I would expect both of those to be kind of grindy, close ones, don't you think?
Oh, without a doubt. On the road, I think Concordia, they had a big win last night. They won at Gustavus. They had beat McAllister. Yeah. Before that, they beat St. John's. Before that, they're playing at a really, really high level. That's going to be a very, very difficult game. And then Scholastica, I think they've won 6 games at home this year. They're playing very well at home. And it's their second year in the league, and they kind of adapt and transition to that. And that's going to be a very, very difficult game as well. And so all of that. And again, it's one game at a time. I've used the golf analogy. It's one hole at a time. The most important shot's your next shot. And for us, that's our practice today, and practice tomorrow, and drill today, the first drill we do from that standpoint. And then, we'll see what happens at McAllister, and then we'll move on to the next hole after that.
It's been fun to watch you guys build this thing. And just the final question I want to ask you is just, I always like to ask coaches if they have any advice for aspiring coaches. Some, senior will be watching this, and that really has the bug to get into coaching, that might pick up something. But it's interesting. You've been part of 3 different schools in the MIAC, right? You went to St. Olaf, you got your master's and coached at Augsburg. And of course, now you're at Carleton. So your path is unique to you. Is there any advice you would give to young kids out there, seniors, maybe a little after that, maybe grad assistants currently? Like, what is your advice for the path to success in this crazy career that you've signed up for here?
It is crazy for sure. The decision to get into it, but I'll try to keep this as concise as possible. And growing up, I grew up in Texas. And for me, some of the most important people in my life were coaches. I had people, not even sports outside of basketball, that really influenced me and had a positive impact on me. And in making my college decision, I knew I had an idea. I remember, I went to Texas A&M basketball camps way back when I was younger, and Porter Mosier was my camp coach, who's now the head coach at University of Oklahoma. And I remember
Illinois State.
As a middle schooler, looking at him and saying, I want to be like him. That's what I want to be able to do. And for me, the path for that was to go to a Division III school. And I was very fortunate to be able to have the opportunity to go to a great school at St. Olaf, to be a part of the team there and have the experience that I had. And I was able to coach there for a couple of years, and each of the places that I've been, I've kind of taken something. And I remember when I started at St. Olaf, Coach Kaz, when he brought me on, he basically said, what I want you to do is recruit. And I was like, okay, fine. So like, I'll come to practices. And then, after that, I'll go to high school games, whatever. He's like, no, you're not listening to me. Like, I don't even care if you come to practice or not. I just want you to go recruit. And so, for me, that really instilled the value of recruiting. And that's, as a young coach, that's where I figured out that that's where I could bring the most value was from a recruiting standpoint. And then I had the opportunity to go to Augsburg. Aaron Grease, who's at Augsburg, is a tremendous coach. And that's where I learned how to coach with him. And I learned how to, as far as evaluating opponents, like what strengths, weaknesses, how to attack and whatnot. And I learned a great deal, and I'm so appreciative of my time working with him. And then, coming to Carleton, and coaching with Guy, who is a legend and just a terrific coach. And that's where I would say I learned how to teach. And, after 38 years, just the way Guy structures his practices, and really it's about the teaching. And he approached it like a professor, approaches class from that standpoint. And so I'm so fortunate, to be able to have worked with three tremendous coaches, and also to be in a league where we've had some great coaches. Yeah. I mean, Johnny Tower is tremendous, and Johnny Tower and Jim Hayes were two guys that I looked at. Jim Hayes is the head coach at Hamlin now, and when I was an assistant coming up, I want to be like those guys. Can I do some, and Johnny is in a different stratosphere, but Doug Novak, who was at Bethel, tremendous. And so for me, that's what I would say. The advice I have is if it's something you want to do, figure out a way to make it happen, and to use your network and path, and then create value. How can you create value wherever you are, whatever staff, and what does that staff need? What does that head coach need? Create value for yourself, and just continue to evolve and develop from that standpoint too. So that's the best that I can give from that standpoint. And I'm very appreciative, to be at a great school, a great institution like Carleton. In my first year as a head coach, to be able to coach this type of team is really a remarkable thing. And it's not something that's overlooked that I overlook at all. I'm very appreciative of all the people that have helped me and the opportunity I've had to be here.
Well, kudos on what you have going here in year one. This is your first year as the guy. 19-3, 14-3 in the league. Big win last night at home against St. John's. Why don't you kind of finish us off here, Ryan? You're going to have some people here from your own school, from other D3 schools. Who knows what kind of random viewers we will have on the QCast, but I want you to leave everyone with whatever final thoughts that you have.
Well, I just want to leave with this, Bob. I'm so appreciative. I sound like I'm not the first person. This is not original, but I'm so appreciative of all of your work, and the attention, that you have brought to our student athletes at our level. I think was it you that tweeted something that got retweeted by Rex? Do I have that correct?
That was my guy Poppers. We were both involved in that.
That's right.
Was Akiva Poppers from Yeshiva University that got the storm going. It was amazing.
And again, I think about going back to my own experience and trying to find live stats for a Division III national championship game in 2002 to kind of where we are now is a tribute to people like yourself, to Dave, to so many people at our level. And so just very appreciative of all of your work, everything you've done, to continue to help grow what we're doing here at the Division III level.
Well, I appreciate that. We have a lot of fun doing it. Those of us that do this as a hobby, it's a blast. It's fun this time of year, especially to start to, prognosticate about the brackets and the pool Cs. And teams like yours are fun to watch. And so, best of luck to you guys. I think, there's so much season left here. And your tournament, the MIAC tournament, is always such a great one, right? I remember last year that McAllister St. John's in a thriller.
Great tournament. Yes, no doubt.
It's a great
championship game
tournament, right? And so I hope everyone tunes into that. Certainly, I guess what I would say is I hope everyone watches this new group of MIAC teams that are out there. We talked about Carleton, but just the McAllister, St. Mary's. If you haven't watched Raheem Anthony, like, holy crap, is this guy good? He's on another planet. So Ryan Kershaw, the head men's basketball coach of the Carleton College Knights. It has been a pleasure getting to spend time with you, and certainly we'll be rooting for your guys the rest of the way, Coach.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks.